All right, we're back here with Talk the Talk with Tribe Title. Today's guest is Todd Fedie. Excited to have him here today. He's Todd Fedie of Todd Fedie Group at Keller Williams. And Todd, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate you coming in. This is going to be exciting for me because I've never really had a chance to talk to you, so it gives me a chance to get to know you and all the listeners a chance to know you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited too.
So Todd, you're new to Keller Williams, but you've been in real estate for quite a while. How long have you been doing real estate now?
So I started as an assistant back in April 2016 and then got licensed July of 2016. So since then, I've been active and ready to go for it.
Awesome. And now how long have you had your group?
So we formed the Fedie Group actually on my 5-year anniversary of being in real estate last year. And that was April 26th of 2021. So about a year and a half now.
Okay. Wow. And you were already, how many people are on your team?
So right now we got 4 associate agents and then a director of operations right now. So 6 heads total.
That's incredible. So do you think your growth, has it been pretty much organic or have you actively tried recruiting?
I would say it's been pretty organic as of right now. I haven't been like, oh my gosh, I need that agent or I need someone to join on that aspect of things. So when I first decided to break off on my own, me and Chanel Cantu was the first one to join me. She was getting into real estate that January and she's like, Todd, like I want to join you. And she was always asking for my help and everything like that. So she always joked that, hey, if I get into real estate, we're going to partner up. So that's kind of how the Fedie Group started, was me and Chanel. And then Rebecca Topolsky ended up contacting me and she's like, hey, I want to join your team. I was like, heck yeah, because me and Rebecca were really close at the time. Yeah. And so that was fine. And, at that point, because I just started the team, I was like, oh, like I was growing faster than I kind of wanted to at that point. I didn't have anticipation of, having this big mega team or recruiting a whole bunch of agents. So once it came with that aspect, we had that. And then at the time I had Ethan for the assistant. So like that was fine. Everything was good. So back in April, right before I left and started the Fedie Group, I had a client, Rochelle, who I sold her house she bought in Brighton. And she was like, let's go out to dinner. And she was one of those people where it was a past client, but I knew she wasn't going to be out of my life. Like I vibed so well with her. She was just so much fun to be around. And so we ended up having dinner and she's like, I'm thinking of a career change and I want to get into real estate. Like I miss working with you and I wanted to get into real estate. And I literally looked at her and I said, hell yeah. I'm like, go get your license, Rochelle. I will show you everything.
That's great.
So Rochelle ended up joining in October and then Jose reached out to me in March of this year. And he's like, hey, I'm not happy with where I'm at right now. I keep hearing great things about you. And he's been such a blessing to the team too. So
that's awesome. So did you know Jose prior as well?
No. So Jose actually came from my first assistant, Ethan. He was friends with him. And, he was with a different brokerage and he wasn't quite getting, I guess, the mentorship that a newer agent should be getting. So Ethan's actually the one that connected Jose and I. And he's like, hey, you need to reach out. And at the beginning, we actually just told this story down at Mega Camp in Austin. And I was like, Jose, when you first met with me, I did not think you liked me. Like it just, it was kind of his guard being up now that like I talked to him about it. He was like, man, I just didn't know what was going on. He was like, I was so excited to join though, but I didn't want to seem like overly excited. Right. And it was funny because I had Dominic meet with us because that was the first person that I didn't really know that wanted to join the team. Yeah. And I told Dominic, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like I've never actively recruited someone before, but when I saw his potential, he just reminded me so much of me when I first got into real estate. I'm like, oh, this guy's going somewhere. And I want his wagon hitched onto my trailer. So, so when he joined, it was, I guess kind of recruiting a little bit, but I didn't know much about him. So now that he's been on the team for a little bit, it's been nice watching him open his shell a little bit and get a little more.
It's cool. And some people are more guarded than others. So it's weird how you'll see those things develop. Some of my best friends in life I've noticed were people that I initially didn't like or thought didn't like me. Yeah. And then it's just, you realize it's just they're very guarded. Yeah. So it's cool to watch that kind of unravel.
Yeah. So a big joke on the team is Chanel's HR. It's just because she's so protective of me. It's really funny. But when Rochelle joined, which I'm not sure if you've met Rochelle, but she's a very big personality, like right off the gate.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about her. And when she first joined Chanel, and we laugh at the story now, she's like, I don't know how I feel about her. And I'm like, it's going to take a second. Like, you got to warm up to Rochelle type thing. And now everyone on the team is, we always mention Rochelle. And she has a side gig of doing pharmaceutical sales too.
Oh, nice.
And, she's kind of more of a showing assistant now, but she always jokes that she sells drugs and she sells houses, but she doesn't sell drug houses. So, one of those things of having the team all love each other.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. I noticed just from like looking at your social media and stuff that you guys do a lot of stuff together as a team, which I think is awesome, and that, helps build camaraderie and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
My next question, with your team growing so rapidly and without you really looking for that kind of growth, does that put a lot of pressure on you as far as, like you were saying, Jose left where he was because there was no mentorship? Do you find that's a hard balance as far as between maintaining your business where you want it and also being there as a mentor to help these newer agents develop the way they want to?
It was difficult off the rip in an aspect that I wasn't expecting, but whenever someone new joined, like Chanel, for example, or especially with Rochelle, I had them follow me around. And if I was on an appointment, they were with me.
Yeah.
And I even had Ethan do that when he was first started as an assistant with me, just because if I'm going to start throwing out terminology, like I need people to know, we call it Todd talk. If I say something, you need to be able to decipher it because my mind goes a million miles an hour. And Lisa, now my director of operations, we kind of laugh about it. She's like, we need to work on that. I'm like, you'll get it in a couple more months. Like, you'll get used to it. But I had, even when Jose joined, I had him go on every showing with me. And at the time, we were working with a whole bunch of buyers. And the month that he started, I think I pended 12 deals.
Oh, wow.
And so every showing that I was going on, he's like, yep, I'm going to be there. We're going to meet here. He rode with me. And after each showing, I told him, I'm like, what are you observing? And I tried to have him point out things that I was doing. And he found that incredibly helpful because, he never showed a house on his other teams with someone else. So he didn't know. They were like, you just show the house. And he's like, what do I do? Like, do I point stuff out? And with my clients, I'm pretty bluntly honest because my dad's a builder. So if I see something that's messed up, I typically point it out like, that's not right. And so he's like, I would never anticipate doing that in sales, like pointing something out that's wrong with the house. Right. And, one of the core philosophies I told him, I'm like, I don't want you being that sleazy sales guy that's getting people into houses that either need a whole bunch of work or you're just in it for a paycheck. I'm like, if that's your goal, then you're on the wrong team. That's not what we're doing here. So I think that helped him build his confidence of being able to help people in a more meaningful way too.
Yeah, and then you feel good about what you're doing, like you said, instead of trying to be a hustler, like actually looking out, which, I mean, that's what you're supposed to be doing. A lot of people don't, but your bottom line is looking out for your client.
Yeah. Yep. I had one deal that was actually back in March of 2020, I think it was, or maybe it was like summer 2020, but it was Nina and Will. I'll never forget these clients. And we had a house in Weberville that was under contract, and the inspector got into the basement and he looked up, and there had to have been a fire above the furnace. Like the furnace had to have caught on fire at one point, and it was a flip, which normally I'm pretty weary on flips. Right. Like we all know the nightmares that some flips can be. And it was charcoal, the subfloor, the floor joist, and they carpeted right over it. And I was like, that's if they're carpeting over charcoal subfloor, like that's not good. And he turned on the faucets and all the plumbing was leaking.
Oh, man.
And I'll never forget, we're in this Michigan basement, literally on like squatting on our knees. And I looked over at Nina and Will and I'm like, you guys can't buy this house. I'm like, first time home buyers. I'm like, this is looking like a nightmare. And I thought Nina was going to cry right then and there. I'm like, please don't start crying. And so I told him, big philosophy I have is everything's meant to be. If it's not going to happen, it's not meant to be. So we ended up finding him a perfect house, and the closing gift that I got him, I normally give signs like a home sweet home sign or something along those lines. And I had the person burn the frame as a joke. Awesome. And I'm like, this is so that you'll never forget Summit Street, like the one house with the charcoal subfloor.
That's a great idea. That's, isn't it weird how that works? It seems like you always hear about everybody, they'll see this house, they miss out on it for some reason, whether it be inspections or somebody else outbid them. And then it seems like they always find that perfect house.
Yeah.
You know?
I've had a couple deals where they were so devastated that they lost it, and it comes back on the market and they end up getting it. And I always tell them, it was funny because I've had probably 4 deals like that. And I always tell them, sometimes you just get a feeling like, I seriously think this is the house. Like, I think it's going to come back. And I had one in Madison Heights that came back up for first-time home buyers. So that same thing, it was pending for like 4 or 5 weeks. They called me and they were like, hey, it's not going through. And my buyers were still looking. They're like, heck yeah. And it was, the
That's
house
cool.
that they kept going back to. And just, even right now, I just pended a house in Hidden Lake. That same thing. We lost out on the offer the first time, and it came back on the market. And my buyer's like, we're getting this one.
That's cool.
So.
And now, so you said I was going to ask that because I kind of had the feeling, but I wasn't sure. So your dad was in construction. Was he a builder?
Yeah. So he's a builder and a custom trim carpenter.
Okay.
That kind of just retired this upcoming year. So he had too many strokes over Labor Day weekend last year.
Oh, wow.
That kind of forced him into retirement a little bit, but he's one of those guys I got my work ethic from. He doesn't stop. Like, telling my dad he needs to stop working. It wasn't going to happen.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, that's the kind of guy that it doesn't sound like he'll ever really retire.
So he was joking and he's like, well, I'm going to need something to do. Like, I'm going to be working for you, Todd. And I'm like, I'll have you run signs around or something. Like, that'll be fine. So he's got a couple doctor's appointments and a surgery coming up. But I told him, I'm like, once you're all good, I'll keep you busy, Dad. Like, you're not just going to be sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
Right. They'll probably be the best signs you've ever seen. They're going to be like perfectly level, square to the property lines.
Yeah, because he renovated my house when I first bought it, and kind of the same thing. I went through, I think, 4 failed inspections.
Yeah.
And just houses that I didn't get offers accepted on when I was looking back in 2019. And when I found my house, it wasn't on the market. We kind of did a inspection. It was my dad looking it over. I got distracted by the view. I'm like, I'll paint the cedar paneling. I'll just, we'll live with it.
Right.
Well, I tell this story to all my buyers too, because I think it's so funny. My dad is such a perfectionist, and it's one of his best and worst traits at the same time, because I'm impatient. And if I want something, like, I want it now type thing, and I'm going to figure out how to get it now.
Right.
And so renovating my house with him definitely tested my patience. And I came home, and we were supposed to do my houses in 3 phases. It was going to be my bedroom in the basement so I can move in.
Right.
Then it was going to be living room and then kitchen, and kind of work our way to the other side of the house. So I came home one day, and I knew I needed 3 floor joists replaced. My dad got in the crawl space. They were rotted from a washer leak.
Right.
He's like, you need these 3 floor joists replaced. I'm like, okay, that's fine. My dad will do it. And I came home one day, and in my living room, I'm staring at dirt. And I was like, where is my floor, Dad?
Right.
Like, this is not funny. And he ripped out like this big old section, and it was dirt crawl space over that one side. He's like, well, it's going to be easier if we do it this way, and we'll just rip everything out and just redeck your house and just rework the design. And I literally, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't have the money for this. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, we'll figure it out. We'll just get it done. He's like, if I just replace the 3 floor joists, then the rest of your floors won't be even. I'm like, I don't care about the rest of the floors right now.
Awesome.
I'm like, I'm staring at dirt. And I tell that story to everyone, because especially when, they see renovation shows like Fixer Upper, and I'm like, it gets stressful. Like, it's not all pretty fancy done in 2 weeks like they make it seem in the...
Yeah, when they edit it all down to 30 minutes, it seems like, no problem. They did it in a half hour.
Yeah, because my renovation took me 10 months. And I always joke, because now that I'm planning on doing the garage edition, I told my dad, I was like, I want people lined up, especially now with contractors being backed up. I was like, I want to try to have as many people lined up as possible, because if I go through a 10-month renovation again, I might not talk to you for a little bit. Like, it won't happen.
It does. It puts pressure on a relationship for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
That's great. But he probably saw something he couldn't live with. Like, he knew if he walked in there and the floors weren't level, it would probably drive him crazy. So
yeah. Well, he'll come in and he'll sit at my dining room table, and we have it overlooking we did this big picture window overlooking it, because I overlooked the cow farm and the lakes in the back. And when I first bought my couches, I put one of my couches up against the window, and he came over and was screaming at me. He's like, we did all this work so you can see the view and put in that big, beautiful window just for you to put a couch in front of it. And he literally moved my couch for me.
That's funny.
But he'll come in and just sit on the table, and he's like, remember when I fell through your crawl space? And I'm like, yes, Dad. I was right there, and I fell through it with you.
Vividly.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Now, when you were young, did you go out like on the job sites with them and stuff? Did you get pretty familiar with like the building process?
Yeah. So he's got pictures of me when he was building my grandma's house right next door. He's got pictures of me when I was like 6 months old, a year old, and I had like a little toy excavator, and I'd be digging out dirt when he was working in the basements, building houses and stuff.
That's
and
cool.
He had a shop off of Old US 23, and we'd go in there and do like tables, and when he was doing trim, we'd help him rip boards for moldings and things like that. So we always helped, and a lot of his clients always knew us. And he had a couple clients. It was Cindy, and I think Bob was the husband's name, but every time we came over, they always had toys for us, or like they had a pool. So my dad would always bring us. I mean, granted, we had a pool too, but he'd always bring us to the job site and things like that. So I got acclimated a lot with the building process, and
that's awesome.
Things like that.
Do you still like doing that? I asked because I worked in a custom cabinet shop in Arizona for like 4 years, and I loved it. It's very relaxing. Do you still do woodworking or anything like that?
I try to. When I go over to my dad's house, like I don't have an issue working in the shop with him or anything like that. I mean, time obviously has been a little bit of an issue, but when we were doing my house, I have vaulted ceilings in my master bedroom, and it had a big old beam, and I had the idea of wrapping it. My dad had all this wood from property up in the UP, had kiln dried and everything. And I was like, I want to do a beam. And so we put it all together, and this beam ended up being massive. And we had to cut it into 2 parts to even get it into my house.
Right.
Like this beam was probably 24 by 18 inches wide. And, we went over there, and we had the chains and the board with some nails on it. We were just beating the crap out of this beam that we had made. So I love going over there, and like we'd always do projects like making picture frames or something like that. And it'd always be a blast when we were over there. My dad, now that he's getting older, he's trusting me a little bit more with some of his equipment.
Right.
Like, back when I was in high school or whatnot, he didn't trust me to run his table saw or anything like that. He'd be like extra paranoid about it. But I think now that he's going into retirement and wanting to show me how to work more of these things, he's like, yeah, go use the shop. Like, go do this.
Yeah.
Something
well, he's
like
probably seen the horror stories. I used to, our shop foreman that I worked with had the 3 middle fingers on both of his hands were gone.
Yeah.
And it was from table saw.
Yep.
Where like back, obviously the equipment was worse then, but it would bind and it kicked back, hit him in the gut, and he ran his hands through the blade.
Oh yeah. No, if you were in a shop, you were following like, you don't do this, you do this type thing. And
right.
Sometimes it would get annoying, like, oh, why do we got to do this or whatnot? But for that point of you didn't want to lose a finger. Right.
And now you relate him to your work ethic, which obviously you have a good work ethic. I mean, I can tell from the business you run. You take care of your team. You also, you do quite a bit of business. As far as the perfectionist stuff, do you feel like some of that traits ran over into you as well, as far as like you being, making sure everything's perfect for your clients?
Yeah, I would say so. And even in like my marketing, for example, if I'm putting my name to it, or even like with contractor recommendations, if I'm putting my name with something and having my name and my brand out there, it's got to be absolutely perfect and to my standards. And as a leader, you need to learn to delegate some. And I'm starting to learn that trait a little bit more. Like you need to know when okay is okay enough for you. And I even, one of my best friends is doing my social media marketing right now, because I know that's not my strong suit.
Yeah.
I can design stuff all day long, but doing Instagram reels and whatnot, I know that's not my strong suit. I don't know how to do it. And so I have McKenna, one of my best friends. She actually lives in Austria, and she's doing all my social media stuff for me. And, the first couple posts she did were absolutely perfect. I'm like, keep doing that. I was like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And she's been a blessing in disguise helping me out with that too.
Very cool. Do you find that having a team and trying to keep everything running, that you're having to do more of that now, as far as kind of just trusting the process, trusting the people around you, and kind of letting them take the reins more on things?
Yeah. When it comes to like transactions and stuff, like with Lisa, she's been with us for a little bit now. And it was funny because I want to say like the first week I kind of gave her my credit card. I'm like, run to the store. She's like, I've never had a boss just give me their credit card. And I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm one of those people, like everything can be fixed. And I told her the first week, I said, Lisa, there's no mistake you can make that I can't fix. Like everything's fixable. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take to fix it. Like try not to make them. And I always joke that her job description is don't get us sued. So, so yeah, there's definitely been a little bit of, I'm one of those people that like to keep everything and try to do everything myself. So that's been a learning lesson I'm actively working on, trying to delegate and realize like, hey, that's going to be okay.
Right. That's cool. Now, you were on a team prior to coming to KW. You were on a team, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And now, do you think that there's a lot of things you learned from being on a team as far as like things that you want to do, but do you feel like there's been a lot of things you've learned also that these are things that you don't want to do on a team?
Yeah, absolutely. So the team that I was on, I mean, they gave me the roadmap of how to be as successful as possible. I mean, we were the #1 team in Livingston County, and I took everything that I learned from that team and tried to model it for my own team. I take a lot of credit, I would say. I had a couple people like in my sphere. Well, I had one person tell me, your business is going to be the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Right.
And after I realized that, I was like, dang, you are correct. Like that 110%, whoever you have close to your sphere is going to be who you are. Like if you have a bunch of negative people, you're going to be a negative person.
Right.
And so during that time when I was on that team, I was soaking in as much as I can like a sponge. I was surrounding myself with the best agents, the best admin, learning the best sales tactics. And when I left and started my own team and kind of had to find that new sphere of, because you can't grow unless you get out of your comfort zone a little bit. So I took everything I learned from that amazing experience at first, and then I started partnering with the different lenders and, different people like Aaron and Dominic when I switched over, and it's been just amazing. But I tried to grow my team primarily around a book I read from a lender that I work with a lot, and it was called Ninja Selling.
Yeah.
Never heard of it, and I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what I want to try to model. And so it's all about relationship selling and not necessarily just being a one and done with a transaction, never talking to someone again. Like that's not how you grow your business. And so I took so many of those tactics and wanted to implement them because it's not something that a lot of people do. And I figured if I do something along those lines, that's going to make me stand out, and that's going to be my differentiating factor.
Yeah.
And so we still do everything, and we just even went to Mega Camp for Austin, and I try to pour in as much into education and learning as possible. I mean, if you're not learning something, you're kind of just staying stagnant.
Right.
And when we were at Mega Camp, they talked a lot about relationship selling and building those relationships. I'm like, this is perfect. I'm already doing half of this. Like it was a good little reminder of, okay, you're doing the right thing type thing.
Yeah, that's always nice to hear, though. At least you're like, okay, this is what they're preaching, so obviously it's already what I'm doing, so keep trucking.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Now, what made you get into real estate? Because I know you're well educated, right? I mean, you went to college. I know you have a degree. Do you have multiple degrees?
So I went to Eastern Michigan, and I graduated with double bachelors in marketing and finance. Originally, when I went to college, I got a full ride at Eastern, and I took AP classes in high school. So by the time I was already in my freshman semester, I already had 12 college credits.
Oh, wow.
So when I went, originally I wanted to get into banking. I loved banking. I loved working with numbers and finance and accounting and stuff like that. I was top of my class with my accounting classes and everything. And the semester that my mom passed away, I was taking investment. It was like all investment courses. And I was taking them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hate this. Like you tell me to sell a short, stock short or do buybacks or whatnot. I was like, I was lost. I was like, that is not what I was anticipating.
Right.
It was just something like, give me numbers, tell me to balance a book, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And so when I got to that semester, I was like, oh, that's not what I want to do.
Uh-oh.
And so my freshman year, I always wanted to get into real estate. And originally I was going to go to Central and take the real estate degree. And my mom's cousin talked me out of it. She said, don't get into real estate. It sucks. People say they're using you and they won't. Like, don't get into real estate. So I was like, ooh, backpedal on that plan. Right. I'm not getting into real estate. And so my freshman year of college, I was actually working as a nanny at that point. They called me Manny Todd for my old English teacher. And I got a notification on Indeed, and it was for a real estate assistant. And I was like, that might work out. Like, I could kind of get my feet wet in real estate and see what it's about. Yeah. And it seems like a really good learning opportunity. So as soon as I got into it, it was a big producing team that I was on. So it was completely different than what I was expecting from what I heard in real estate.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of duties on the team. And then once I started getting my license and selling, I was like, I really like this. So I worked 5 days a week, and I went to school 2 days a week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, or Monday and Wednesdays, were my school days. And I'd still work from school. Like, I'd be in class, like, responding to emails and stuff. Just, I'm naturally pretty good at school, so it came pretty easy. And then I'd work the other 5 days of the week, and I was just grinding it out during college and graduated magna cum laude. And
that's awesome.
As soon as I graduated high school, I'm like, I'm sticking with real estate. And I told my team at the time, I was like, I kind of want to focus more on, like, being a buyer's agent. And they're like, go for it. And, you know, that year was 2019, and I think I sold just shy of 8 million that year. And then 2020, I ended up selling a little over 10. I think it was 10.8 million during COVID. And then 2021, when we formed the team and got everything done, it jumped up to 8.6.
That's incredible.
So
now, do you go into it with a goal? Like, do you set yourself a number every year that you're trying to reach, or do you just kind of do what you've been doing and let it kind of shake out where it is?
I didn't until I came to Keller Williams, and we went to family reunion. Aaron and Dominic, they helped. I guess I didn't know the fundamentals of having a team until I came to Keller Williams and, like, actually treating it like a business. I never had that aspect of things. And so when we went to family reunion, they started talking about, oh, this is how you do the team, and this is how, you know, you set goals and everything. And I looked over at Aaron and Dominic on a couple of the classes. I'm like, I'm not doing any of this. And I started to freak out, and my mind was going a million miles an hour. It was funny because we were talking about implementing stuff, and she's like, just do one sheet of paper. Keep it at that. Don't overwhelm yourself, because I was going back to the hotel room, and I was talking with my partner, Brian, about it. I'm like, I got to do everything, like, right now. And I was starting to psych myself out. I'm like, this is going to be a failure year, like, everything. And so when I came back, it was funny. I had a goal chart made, and we all sat down as a team. We all set our goal, and it's in little, like, thermometers. Yeah. And each closing, we fill it in, and we get a little closer to our goal. And it was actually contributed from family reunion. I ordered it from the hotel room down in Orlando. Like, I was on Staples, and I told my assistant at the time, I was like, go pick it up. I'm like, this needs to be on the wall by the time I get back.
That's cool. But I mean, the cool thing is too, that you've been having quite a bit of success without that. Yeah. So it's like, you know, what's the limit now that you're implementing these steps? Like, you know, the sky's the limit.
Yep. Yeah. So really long as, you know, you don't stray away from your systems and keep trying to grow and learn.
Yeah. And do you think that's important, like, as you grow a team, to kind of stay humble, stay organic, and not lose sight of what it is that you started out trying to build?
Yeah. I try to never take for granted my success and where I'm at with life. I mean, I'm 25 years old. I own 3 houses. I got a thriving business, and I still hustle and grind every day as if I'm first year in the business and, you know, need to prove myself. And I just always have that mentality because I don't ever want to get comfortable. Yeah. I've seen people get comfortable, and it, you know, not even just in real estate, in other businesses, you get comfortable and it shoots yourself in the foot. So I always try to pretend as if I have nothing in my bank account, and as if I have nothing, like I have so many people to prove wrong. So
stay hungry.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's cool. So you say you have 3 houses. You have obviously your house you live in. Then you have a rental.
Yep. I got a rental in Heartland behind Meyer, and I just purchased this summer an Airbnb up in Gladwin.
Yeah, I saw that. How's that going?
Great. So my dad and my stepmom bought a cottage up on the lake. Yeah. And the day that we're moving them in, it was the day after New Year's. So we were up there. We had the van loaded. Everything was getting moved in. And I fell in love with it when we were up there and exploring it more. I'm like, this is absolutely gorgeous up here. And so we always joked around like, hey, Todd, you need to buy a cottage up there. So before they even moved in, my stepmom was sending me listings on the lake. And at that time, I was like, man, a cottage? Like, I was psyching myself out. I'm like 24 years old. I'm like, I can't be looking at a third house. Like, that was freaking me out. And so I looked at this house on the lake. I ended up not pulling the trigger, and I should have. But in hindsight, it ended up being a blessing. Yeah. And it was on the lake. It was gorgeous. Had this bunkhouse. It would have been a perfect Airbnb, but I freaked myself out. I'm like, what if this fails? Like, I had all those limiting beliefs that should have been pushed to the side. But at the time, I was planning on doing my garage edition that year.
Yeah.
And I was worried, okay, I'm going to throw all my money into this. I won't have money for the garage edition. Like, I don't want to overwhelm myself.
Right.
So I decided, I'm like, okay, well, I threw him an offer and I said, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And it ended up not getting accepted. So I'm like, okay, that was God telling me it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
So we were up there and we've been enjoying it, throughout the summer and going up there for fishing in March and April and stuff. And there was one day in June where my stepmom sent me a Zillow link to a house down the street. We passed it 1,000,001 times. I never noticed it.
Yeah.
And she's like, look what just came on the market. And then my search popped up like literally 15 minutes later with the same house. And that night she sent it to me at 8 o'clock in the morning. I had a full day of appointments. And I mean, like, I had showings at 7 o'clock. I drove up there after my 7 o'clock appointment in Pinckney, and I'm like, I'm looking at this house. It was absolutely perfect. It was fully remodeled. It wasn't on the lake.
Yeah.
It was right 2 doors down from the boat launch. It had this massive barn. I was like, this is awesome. I wouldn't be paying the lake taxes. Like, I'd be off the lake, but still have the benefits. And so I drove up there. My dad was already up there with his worker. So we were up there at 9. I went to my dad's cottage, wrote the offer at 9:45, and then drove back down. Yeah. And the next night, we actually had a call night with the team where everyone came over to my house. I had pizza and whatnot. And I got a call from the agent. They're like, well, your offer's getting accepted. And I was like, sheer panic at that point.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Yeah. And I called Keanu, who helped me with the mortgage. I'm like, well, let's get going on it. Yeah. And so I closed on it the week before 4th of July, and it was 2 weeks. Keanu had to close for me in 2 weeks. I said, that's Keanu, cool. I'm going to be up there for 4th of July.
Yeah.
And so during those 2 weeks, I was on Facebook Marketplace. I'm getting all the furniture. Right. And luckily, my dad he has a second house on his property. And I was buying everything. I was using his van, and I was going back and forth, and everything was just sitting in his basement. And the more the stuff came, he's like, how long is this going to be here for? I'm like, as soon as it closes, like, we're going up there. I'm running a U-Haul. We're making it one fell swoop. And so we got it all done and did a couple repairs to it, just little things that I wanted to do. And we rented it. Put it up for rental the last week of July. Yeah. So far, it's been booked 92% of the month of August.
Wow.
And we've already made $2,200 profit in 1 month renting it. And I got my sister managing it for me. So she's messaging all the guests, helping me run it and coordinate the cleaner and stuff like that. So it's been amazing so far.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So that in that short a time, so then with repeat business and things like that, you're probably going to start really noticing it next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I even have it booked out for 4th of July next year already.
That's cool.
And the week that they have it booked is enough to pay my mortgage on it.
That's
so
incredible.
It's been, you see everything on TikTok and everything of these people buying Airbnbs and everyone talking about investing in real estate. And granted, I already have my rental in Heartland, which has been doing great for me. But I guess the unknown of the Airbnb and never getting into it. I had a client that bought a house in Evart on the Muskegon River. And so I was touching base with her, and she ended up becoming really close friends with me. And I'm like, Kaylee, I need your help. So she showed us all the Airbnb stuff, and we text back and forth. I'm like, we need to get another one. Like, it's funny because every time I get the notification of a new booking, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Like, I've had it lottery listed 2 months already, and I still get the little butterflies in my stomach when I get the notification.
Yeah, which is cool because it's unknown, like a lease, but like that, it's just kind of like you're waiting, and then boom, you get something. You get these little...
Well, I've had less problems with my Airbnb than I have with my actual rental.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot because these people big security deposits, short-term stay. You're never worried about eviction or anything like that.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. So it's definitely, there's going to be more in the future.
Yeah.
So I told myself by the time I'm 30, I want to have 5 properties. So I'm already halfway there.
Yeah, you'll make it, I think.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now, do you think that in the long run, your finance degree is going to help you as far as, like you said, always pretending like you don't have money? Do you think that'll help you in the long term as far as knowing what to do with your money and putting it where it needs to be in order to kind of give you that financial freedom as you get older?
Oh, absolutely. So I have like my retirement accounts and stuff. When I was on the other team, I was offered a 401k. And even when I was on that team, I had 100% of my paycheck go into my 401k, and I lived off of my commission from the sales.
Oh, wow.
And I purposely did that because I never wanted to rely on my hourly wage, again, staying hungry and wanting to keep going.
Right.
And so I never saw my paycheck. It went right in my 401k. And by the time I did the 401k transfer, it was like $12,000. And I only had the 401k set up for, I think, 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, like I'm going to keep that boat going.
Right.
And so I have my financial planner out of Heartland. His name's Kevin. And the first day I met him, I was 23 still. I didn't turn 24 yet. I'm like, hey, like we're going through everything. And I know like some of the terminology, but again, not my forte. Like tell me how much I need to write you a check for and we'll call it good type thing. And so he was actually kind of shocked when he saw how young I was and, you know, everything when we're going through everything and telling him how much I wanted to contribute. And I said, Kevin, 50 and I'm retiring. I said, I need you to tell me how much I need to give you to retire at 50. I'm like, just figure it out. And he kind of chuckles every time I mention that to him. And, you know, I still have that automatic as if it never went into my bank account and keep that going. And, you know, I've been helping my brother with it. He's got his all set up and, you know, we check on it and see how everything's going and little things like that.
That's cool. What does your brother do?
He works at a company in Farmington in the IT department.
Okay.
So my younger brother does that. And then I have 3 older siblings, but he kind of my older brother is, if I remember correctly, the VP of the IT department for General Electric's North America division.
Oh, wow.
So he's got like some big job title. Like you give him a computer issue and he's like, oh yeah, let me hack right in. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, but go for it, Brad. Like that is so
that's cool
above my head. But yeah, Chad's kind of, I wouldn't say following his footsteps, but has kind of similar goals and things of what Brad's doing. So, but yeah, he's very, very computer savvy.
Very cool. Now, where do you see, I guess, what's kind of your goal for the next 2 years with your team? Do you want to keep growing? Do you want to just kind of stay where you're at and hone it in, or what does that look like?
My biggest goal for my team for the next 2 years is getting back to the basics and making sure those are mastered before we try to do anything else. I feel like there's a lot of people, especially as the shift is here and happening, that they're trying to do all these different things opposed to focusing on the basics. And I told my team, just even when we were down in Austin and whatnot, I said, we need to focus on doing what we do and doing it well and making sure we do that. I'm not actively looking to grow the team. I'm comfortable with where we're at. We have a good working dynamic. And, you know, everyone on the team honestly, I know people are like, it's a red flag if you say you're one big happy family, but it honestly is. I could call any of my team and be like, hey, I'm in trouble. I need you to come help. And they'd be there in a second. So I love that family aspect that we have. We can all rely on each other and celebrate each other's wins. So I wouldn't say I'm actively looking, but if the right thing happened, obviously I got that growth mindset. Like it'd have to be a perfect little fit in with the team. But I think the next 2 years, my plan is I want to hone in on what we're doing well, master it, keep it going, and just focus on charging right into the storm and being the best that we absolutely can.
Where do you see the market going in the next couple of years? I know you talk about a shift, and you know that's kind of what everybody's talking about. What is your kind of forecast, having the experience you have? Where do you see it going?
So in 2020 and 2021, what I saw personally was so many sellers wanting to be the new comp, the new highest, and they were getting it just because of the lack of inventory. And I've talked with so many people about it, just kind of getting their perspective on it, especially lenders, because they see it a lot more too on the mortgage side. And the rise in interest rates was necessary. I'm glad it happened. What I think that's going to do is it's going to price some people out, which is fine. Some people, in my opinion, needed to be priced out. And I think it's getting sellers back to a level of realism that they needed to get back to. Because so many people, if we had a comp at 375, they wanted to list their house at 425. I actually just had a listing appointment, I'd say probably a month and a half ago, where my CMA came in at 450, and they were like, well, we want to list at 6.
Holy cow.
House on 10 acres. It had horse property. And they were like, well, what about the horse barn and everything? And I was like, you know, maybe my CMA's off. Like, you know, I could be wrong. I'm fair to admit that. And so I literally reached out to 3 of the appraisers I work with a lot in Livingston County. And they're like, no, 450 is even pushing it. And I'm like, okay, like, my number wasn't that off. And I kind of told the seller, I'm like, I won't list your house for 600. Like, I won't do it. And it ended up selling for a lot less than 6 because they listed with someone else, and they didn't have all the professional pictures and everything. But it gets to that point where we're going, I think, is what we're seeing is we're not going to see the double-digit appreciation. I think we're still going to see appreciation because inventory is so limited. Because I even just did a video on this for our social media. If you have 1,000 buyers at 3% and 200 buyers at 6%, it doesn't matter if you only have 150 houses for sale.
Right.
It don't matter. The buyer pool is still there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of did a supply and demand chart to kind of explain what's going on, because I feel like, at least for me, I'm more visual to show people what's going on. Comparison, everyone sees a shift in the market and they think about '08 because it's so fresh. And with my finance courses, I literally took 3 courses on the financial crash of '08, and the amount of shady stuff that happened back then that's not happening now.
Right.
I don't think people realize, like, you could have been working at Starbucks and they had given you a mortgage for $600,000, and then you would have refinanced it for $650,000.
Right.
Knowing that you couldn't have paid it back. As a self-employed person trying to get a mortgage on a second house, I will tell you how hard it was. That was a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, it's tough.
All the documentation, they want to know everything about your firstborn child that's not even born yet. And I'm like, I'll gladly give you the information. But it was funny because I had, obviously, commission checks going in and on my bank accounts. And they were like, well, this one is $5 different than what your commission check tab should have said. And I was like, is it illegal to throw extra $5 in your bank account?
Yeah,
Like,
I had a 5 in my pocket.
Yeah, or there was one deposit where I took like $1,000 cash out, and they were like, well, why is there $1,000 difference? I'm like, because I took cash out.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now it's gone from like one extreme to the other.
Yeah, which honestly I'm kind of glad for because no one wants another '08.
Right.
So I think where we're going is we're not going to see the double-digit appreciation that we've been seeing, which is great. It needs to happen. It needs to normalize. There's going to be less sellers trying to be the top comparable in the neighborhood, which it doesn't have to be. I was even talking to Mike Wilbanks about it, and when he was appraising one of my listings, and he was like, I was getting so tired of trying to appraise a house that was going to be the new top comparable. He's like, you can't do it for that long. And so I was talking to him about it, but I think what we're going to see is more of the appreciation of the 2 to 4%, which is normal. Yeah. I think the buyer market's still going to stay strong, even with interest rates being with where they're at. They're still lower than what the 30-year average has been. Right. But again, I think people are so accustomed to the past 8 years where they've seen 2, 3, 4% interest rates. Right. When it comes to that aspect. So I think the buyer market's still going to be strong. I always tell my buyers, if I thought the market was crashing, I wouldn't have bought a third house. Right. I wouldn't have done it. If anything.
Yeah, you'd sit and wait.
I'd sit and wait like everyone else is thinking that they're going to do and make a big thing. And we were talking, we were down in Austin, one of our Uber drivers, he's like, oh, you're here for the Keller Williams conference. And he was telling us about how he had a new construction under contract for $350 and backed out. And that house is now going for $420. Right. And he's like, I can't afford it. And I was like, you should have bought it when it was $350. Yeah. And it was funny because I was looking at buying one of the new construction condos that Jen Peterson has listed. Yeah. And when they first started building them, I think it was late 2019, they're going for like $195. And then obviously building prices and everything went up, and now they're listed at $250. I was like, the smartest thing I would have done is buying that one of those condos and renting it out and then selling it, as one of the new builds. And, the saying of the best time to buy a house is always 5 years ago. That's true in anything you say. I could have bought my house 5 years ago and been fine, and you could have bought a house now, and in 5 years you're going to be fine. So there was a statistic at Mega Camp about the difference between renting and owning, and if you're going to own for more than 3 years, you're always going to come out 90% of the time. You're going to come out ahead and good to go compared to renting.
Yeah, even if you break even, you lived somewhere for free for 3 years. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Yep. Yeah, I look back at the houses I've owned. And every single one of them, I'm like, had I just not gotten rid of those and kept them as a rental, even if it just covered the mortgage, the difference in money I would have made would be astronomical, had I kept them all and then decided to sell them all last year. Yep. So that's what made me kind of shift to where I'm like, I just need to start buying property. Well,
I've had, when we're even looking at houses, I always think in the back of my head, is this a house I would buy, one, or two, is it a house that I think that they would have financial success with and be okay? Because I even tell first-time buyers when they're worried about it, like, oh my gosh, what if I lose my job, something like that. I try to go through worst-case scenario with them. Yeah. Okay, worst-case scenario, you rent your house out. let's look at rental comparables. What would you get if your mortgage on this house is only going to be $1,500, but you can get $1,800 a month in rent?
Right.
Rent prices aren't going to drop as drastic if, let's say the market does crash. Rent ain't going to go down 50%.
No.
Rent's going to stay the same. So I always try to tell them in that aspect, worst case scenario, you rent it out. If you got to move in with family and rent your house out, you're still going to be okay. You're going to have someone else paying your mortgage off. And
now you're making $300 a month as opposed to making $0 and getting evicted out of your apartment.
Absolutely. Well, I even told Rochelle last night, because we had drinks up at Heartland Brewery, and I was telling her about the cottage, and she was telling me how's it going. And I told her, I was like, even if I break even on this cottage, one, I'm going to have the tax benefit, which a lot of people, I think, fail to acknowledge in real estate investing.
Right.
The amount of money that's going to save me in income taxes is amazing.
Yeah, the depreciation,
things, all my expenses for it, everything along those lines. You get to write off your property taxes. And since it's now being held in an LLC,
right,
my homeowner's insurance, my mortgage payment, the cleaning fees, everything like that.
Yep.
So I told her, even if I break even on this house, not only did I have someone pay my mortgage off for a year, so I got that principal balance that someone paid off for me, I then have the tax benefit, and I got a cottage for free.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not complaining about that. I got a cottage I can go use for free.
Yeah.
And
it'll appreciate.
Yeah.
And I've even heard that you can take the money, like whatever it took for down payment and things like that, you can write that as a loan to the LLC.
Yep.
And charge interest on that. That's tax, deferred money.
Yeah. Disclaimer, I am not an accountant, so please advise your accountant if you have any questions on that. But just in that aspect, like, that's kind of where my finance brain kicks in a little bit. The numbers, the tax appreciation, everything like that. So the biggest thing, even with my cottage, was the fact that it had a 38 by 42 barn. And as soon as my dad saw that, he's like, indoor boat storage. And
exactly.
I'm like,
that's what I was thinking when you said
for a couple $100 though, Dad. Like,
yeah, for sure. See how many boats you can fit in there.
Yeah. Yep.
No, that's great. That's awesome. So team's going well. Everything's going well for you. Are you happy that you made the switch to KW? Has that been a big change for you?
That has been honestly one of the biggest blessings in disguise. When it happened, it was incredibly scary. It was so sudden and unexpected when we did switch that it's been such a blessing in disguise. So when I went out on my own, Dominic will tell you the story and laugh, and I had 17 KW people reach out to me. They were like, oh my God, Todd, you need to join. And I'm talking Jen Peterson, Rachel Evers, Joe Barnwell, people I love and respect. I love them to death. Right. But at the time, I was happy with where I was at. I already had enough change going out of my own. I was not looking to make any more change. I was like, I need to float here for a second. And so I ended up having to call Dominic, because the amount of phone calls I got that day, I was like, Dominic, I don't know if you're telling these people to call me or what, but you need to tell them to stop. Like, I love you. Like, cool. Thank you. But I'm not interested. And so Erin ended up sending me some shirts, and she's like, I'm so sorry. They were so like ambitious on reaching out to you type thing. And I look back on it now and I laugh, and I was like, I should have listened. Like, this has drastically changed my business. And, we look back on it, and we were just talking about it at Mega Camp at dinner and just kind of chuckled a little bit, but it's been such a blessing in disguise and how much it's changed my business and how much I wanted to run the team differently and running it like a business. I never did profit loss statements in my life for my own thing. I kind of, there's money in the bank account. Let's go advertise here and do something like that. So when I first started doing the Airbnb and like running my numbers and stuff, because they talk about Millionaire Real Estate Agent, how you want to try for 40% profitability. Yeah. And when I first ran my numbers, I'm like, I texted Aaron and Dominic. I'm like, I'm at 48%. I'm like, I'm doing great, And, that was something that is a nice win to celebrate that you get over at KW.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I noticed that over there, that the camaraderie, even all the people I've had in here for these talks, it seems like one of the big things they do, and I don't think it's that they teach it necessarily, but one of the common threads that seems to be there for everybody there is the constantly looking out for the best interest of their client. And that comes first. And then just through, by default, the money and everything else follows, because you get the referral business, you build the trust, and you have the relationships, like you were saying, selling on relationships, which is huge.
Well, that, and even when we switched, because it was such a different like even turning in an offer, like normally we just scanned it and called it good, but then you had to submit it in command, and I freaked out. The first week I had 3 deals I had to turn in, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. And I went home because it was so, I didn't want anyone to see me at my little spot over there because I didn't have the office yet. And I didn't want anyone to see like, oh, Todd's, doesn't know how to do this. Like, haha. But I wasn't used to that. Like, I wasn't used to being able to go knock on Jen Peterson's door and say, hey, can you please help me? Or like Robin Love and go ask Dale. And so when my computer died, I'm like, I'm just going to go. And Aaron was like, who's got a computer charger? And there was like 4 people in the office that was like, oh, here you go. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Like that took a second to warm up to.
Oh, they're nice.
Yeah. They'll actually help.
Right.
And I would say that was probably one of the most drastic things, being able to, go knock on Bun Warren and say, hey, what's going on with you guys? What are you guys doing that works? And, they even reached out to me with because at closing we do give us your birthday, your kid's birthday. We want to celebrate with you guys after closing. And Bun Warren was like, we like that idea. Can you show us like how you did that?
Right.
And, we had like an hour-and-a-half meeting about how are you growing your team and what are you doing for accountability? And just, I've never done that before. Like I've always kind of just figured it out on my own. So having all these huge teams and everyone that's built such an amazing business, just learning from them. Yeah.
It's like there's the teams within the teams, it's like everybody shares, which, I mean, it just helps everybody, under that umbrella as a whole, which is incredible.
Yep. Yeah. Cause you're only as good as everyone that you surround yourself with. Yeah. So, kind of like what I was saying with the Sphere. Yeah. And I feel like even at KW, even if we're not like super close personally, I still able to call any one of them up and say, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that even on the Facebook page, it's like everybody, like somebody needs help. Boom, boom, boom. There's people jumping all over it.
Yeah.
And it's obviously taken away from their time, their weekend, and they're more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. Thank you, Todd, for coming in. I appreciate it. Yeah. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
So we have our website all set up. It's thefediegroup.com. And if you ever want to email us, it's Todd at the Fedie Group, or give us a call at 517-304-3706.
Awesome. And they'll share those links also at the bottom so people can see that if they want to get in touch with Todd.
Oh, perfect.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.